Welcome to This Week in Coworking, where industry leaders get succinct, actionable insights. Here are your hosts, Hector, Kolonas, and LaRosa.
Hey, and welcome to the This Week in Coworking podcast feed. It's been a while, but we've been working on something really, really special. And before we dig into exactly what that is, I want to introduce my new co-host, Mike LaRosa. Mike, how are you?
I'm doing great, Hector. How's it going?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to have you here. We dropped a really good newsletter this week. Before we get into what was in there, what are these Friday recaps going to look like, Mike? What can people expect from us?
Well, we've been talking about this for quite a while and trying to figure out the best way to make it work. If any of you remember Clubhouse back during the pandemic days, that's really what inspired this idea. Friday afternoon used to be a really great way to wind down the week. We'd hop on Clubhouse. There'd be a wide number of us kind of discussing what was in the This Week in Coworking newsletter. So it's taken some time, but Hector and I put our heads together and have come up with what we think is a really great format, something to give everyone a quick listen insight into what's going on in This Week in Coworking. And then if they so choose, they can dive into the newsletter for all the other details. So probably about 2-3 hot topics every week. And then we'll have some interviews here and there. And I know you've got some big names lined up.
We definitely do. And I look forward to sharing more of those. So if you are listening on a podcast stream or you are listening to this on our LinkedIn feed or anywhere else, and you prefer to have this on the go, head over to your favorite podcast app, search for This Week in Coworking, and join us there. Now, this is going to be very experimental as we figure out all the pieces, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be increasingly better as we go on and on. But if you do have any feedback or you'd like to give us any ideas or suggestions, or you'd like to take part as a co-host and join the discussion, do ping us an email at podcast@thisweekincoworking.com, and we look forward to getting back in touch with you.
Yes.
So,
because it just can't be the two of us every week, right? We want to mix it up. So, hit us up with your best ideas.
We want to hear from you. We want to share your opinions. We want to share your voices, and we want to share what's happening in your side of the co-working world. Definitely reach out. We look forward to having you on the podcast. Now, Mike, it was a big week this week. We saw a lot of news in the newsletter. I'm going to pick my favorite story and we'll dive into that. And then hopefully you can ping one of yours and we'll dive into that. Ready to go?
Yeah, take it away.
Perfect. So one of the big stories that caught my attention this week was the fact that Booking.com had just lost its case in the European Court of Justice, essentially making their age-old practice of requiring best pricing to be on their platform, basically making that illegal or making it not enforceable so that operators or hotel owners could list their best price on their websites or with their other partners or in other chains, which until now, Booking had to have the best price in order to get all the benefits. Now, what does that got to do with co-working? You're probably thinking. There's a lot of aggregators. I think we discussed it on stage a couple of weeks ago, and there's over 100 aggregators that operators are actively using. Some of those have terms saying, you have to give us your best price. You can't mark it up. You can't add in factors for commission. You can't put a better price on your website. If you do campaigns elsewhere, you have to do the campaign on our site. And apart from that, operational headache that is, it's just not feasible. A customer coming directly to you, to your brand, you want to build that relationship. So a court case like this is kind of setting that precedent that maybe those rules aren't that enforceable.
It's interesting. So anyone out there that's familiar with, Hector and I and kind of our soapbox, this one is most definitely that the flex workspace and co-working industry is really starting to parallel to the hotel industry, right? Because at the end of the day, the way people consume this office space is turning into a similar way that you consume a hotel room, right? You make a booking, you show up, and even you can use your app sometimes to get into the door. So I think it's great. And it's not surprising that in the EU, this court case happened, right? Because I think it's a little bit more slanted towards the consumer's favor over there. Although we've seen court cases here in the States about booking fees, right? Or resort fees, right? They've been going after Marriott for that. Anyway, so I think that the aggregators, having been on both sides of this coin, right? The aggregators are important. They do bring a lot of business to some of these spaces, but not all of those spaces. At the end of the day, the operator is the primary customer of that aggregator, right? And so I think that this seems like a no-brainer, but I think also in this day and age, through all different types of technology, and we'll mention in our market moves coming up, one specific case in point, the spaces aren't as reliant on those aggregators anymore, just like these hotels aren't as reliant on booking, right? In the 90s and the aughts, it was easier to go there. But now with the internet and with the development of web-based platforms and technology tools, there's a lot of hotels out there that are doing it themselves. So I think that some of the booking aggregators in our industry should probably just take note that they can have those clauses in their contract, but good luck trying to really enforce them.
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure that we're going to see a lot more discussions over the next couple of months about aggregators and this changes in commission and what it all means. A lot of moves being made behind by a lot of the aggregators, a lot of M&A happening. That's going to change up what the pricing looks like, what the commission structures look like. Mike, what caught your attention this week?
So I think one of the things I love the most about this week in co-working is, there's like newsy type stuff and there's celebratory type stuff like anniversaries, and that's all good to know. And even other podcasts, even though you should be dialing into us from now on. But there's also like the sharing of resources. And so there's a lot of content marketing out there that is fluff. And I saw this piece and really felt that it deserved a proper shout out. The Office R&D team clearly put some effort into this. So as someone who jumped into co-working with the right intention and wanted to foster a community and have a really great engaged space, I also didn't have an MBA, right? And math was never my strong suit. So I had a lot of the core skills for running co-working, but I didn't have the financial back end. And so Office R&D has 23 crucial financial benchmarks. And this is stuff that I think everyone needs to know, because you can't serve your community and if you're not financially stable, right? So it's not an ad. I know Office R&D is a supporter. It's just shouting out. Sometimes you read these marketing pieces and you feel like you're a little dumber. This one, I actually was like, oh, I feel smarter. Yeah. So anyway, if you're thinking about opening up a new space, or you're trying to open up your first space, it's a really great resource to check out.
And it's even more timely now at the end of the year. Everyone's doing analysis of what happened this year, what's happening next year. I'm not really sure who told me, probably my brother, to be honest, said what gets measured gets done, right? If you're not measuring the metrics, if you're not measuring to a benchmark, you're thinking about things from that viewpoint, you're just going to drop things in the year. So probably a really good time to dig into that piece and really just assess which ones matter to you and your business and your stakeholders, and then take it from there. All right, I'm going to do a little bit of a humble brag here. Back in week 6 of 2023, if you remember back last year, early part of the year, I definitely made a call. Seeing what Adam Neumann was doing at Flow, it was a matter of time before he would launch a new co-working brand. This week, we heard all across the techie startup blogs that Adam Neumann and his Flow project had launched Workflow, which are co-working spaces within residential projects that they manage at Flow. Not something that nobody saw coming. We're just happy that we kind of were able to predict that and can call that in. I am going to make another prediction on the back of that because running Flex within residential projects is very, very different from running in an office environment or an office building, I'm assuming and believe we're going to start seeing a lot of M&A and kind of headhunting action targeted towards the companies who have a pretty big bank of experience in working with residential landlords, residential laws, zoning, technology, looking kind of at the folks over at Apt Coworking, looking at the industrious team who've nailed this a few times, looking over at the whole team at Silverman Properties here in Jersey City, who have done this time and time again, bringing co-working into their residential projects and all the headaches that they had to overcome in doing it.
First off, I just immediately had the vision of the "told you so" Dan, because you really did call this. But I think that it's interesting. I've given Adam his fair share of crap, and I've been vocal about like things that I didn't agree with. I think that you're seeing someone who's been able to get in there and kind of manage him, right? Because these concepts, he was right about a lot with WeWork, but he was trying to do 1,000 things at once, and he wasn't doing any of them really particularly well. And so his real passion was always like that commune-driven community. I toured the WeLives here, the ones in DC that have now been shuttered, right? But the concept always made sense, right? And we're seeing more of these towers that are having different zones, right? Take a look at the line in Saudi Arabia. You've got like all of these different kind of blocks of residential, maybe some hotel, maybe some office, maybe some retail, right? And so, yeah, it's spot on perfect for a brand for the name alone. Like that's great. I think it's matured Adam. And I think that they'll go a little bit slower. That I lose it when they talk about how the renters will have a sense of ownership and that they'll be incentivized and motivated to plunge their own toilet. That type of stuff I still kind of lost on me. But as it relates to being a pure real estate play, I think like good on him for getting someone else to give him money again to do this. And wish him the best of luck with it, right? It seems like it's a little bit more controlled and managed. I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, I definitely think it's a completely different type of approach, but it also kind of going back to the law of WeWork and how it started with the apartments first and then kind of shifted towards the office space. It makes sense. It's the same strategy. It's the same approach. Just as you said, a little bit more measured, a little bit more structured.
Companies are adding these amenity spaces, right? People don't want to necessarily work where they live. You and I can very much appreciate that. There's a reason why I flew to Jersey just for 5 hours to co-work, right? So I don't know, not to interrupt you, but this model's working. So, yep. But yeah, I guess what I'm going to say, what I meant to say is that everyone else is doing it. So at least now it's like the safe play, right? I don't know. Sorry, I cut you off.
No. And that should bring us up a pretty good point because Adam is not known for having a safe play, right?
Yeah.
Which definitely makes you think, what is his wild card? There is definitely something that will be more Adam.
Maybe the locations.
I'm really to kind of see what that looks like. Because I do know, having looked at the feed that we get that kind of comes into the backbone of the newsletter, there is a lot of moves. They are hiring some pretty strategic people in some countries that they weren't in operating before, or they didn't have a big presence in before. And they're making moves for specific types of communities, specific types of markets. So I think as we start covering more and more of how this rolls out, we'll get a better and clearer picture. And Adam, if you're watching, definitely come on and let us know what's happening.
Because there is so much news happening all the time, and there are so many different kind of channels, right? There's all these different things being thrown at you. It's hard to kind of force through the trees, and the newsletter allows us to have these trends, right? This is no different than like a Soho House play, right? And we've been seeing like the evolution of these membership clubs, right? And then some of them have residency, or like this is just kind of, I think you can be successful. You don't have to have world domination. You don't have to be the largest leaseholder in Manhattan to be successful. You can have a really exclusive community type feel and these like unique destinations, I think. But now it doesn't make him any different. And it most definitely doesn't make him a $40 billion tech company, right? No matter how much he talks about the tech community platform, it's still a real estate business.
So we'll let it play out.
Yeah.
But either way, I'm not creating any judgment. I'm just excited to see kind of another play added to the ecosystem. And we will definitely keep coverage of it, making sure that we're following the trend. Now, they don't have a brand profile just yet, but it will be generated because it's the first time they got mentioned. So you'll be able to hop over to the brand section of This Week in Coworking and follow the news about workflow and other related companies through that interface. Mike, we had a bunch of market moves across the world. Do you want to just give us a quick story or overview of who's doing what, where?
So we saw Industrious moving into Germany. They're going to have a really big 700 desk location right in the middle of Berlin. We've got expansion for Success Piece, which is a really interesting franchise that spun out of the Success magazine. And so they opened up in San Antonio. And we've also seen a French operator get into the franchising business. 30 spaces in 3 years is really ambitious for now Coworking. I wish them the best of luck. But like we just mentioned, there's a lot of brands being spun up, and there's as many brands of hotels that are out there. There can be flex workspace co-working brands. Last but not least, I alluded to it a little bit earlier. There was an Australian operator, the Commons, announcing that they're actually standing up their own app for on-demand booking. So, aggregators are starting to not only compete with each other, but also the operators as well. And speaking of Australia, I think you recently had a phone call with someone down under. Do you want to give us a little sneak peek as to one of the first interviews you've done as part of this podcast series?
Absolutely. So I caught up with Jessie Glew, who's the main boss over at WOTSO. We dug into what's in the name, what they're up to, a bunch of the news stories that they've been included in our newsletter over the last couple of weeks. We'll drop a soundboard here to listen in and kind of hear how that conversation sounds. But for the full interview, just me and Jessie, look out for the podcast feed on Monday. That will be dropping exclusively through This Week in forward.
That's awesome. Yeah, they've been in the newsletter quite regularly. They've got a medical concept. They've got a standalone unmanned concept that they're rolling out. So it's been pretty exciting. I'm glad you were able to chat with her, and it should be great for everyone to listen.
Let's just jump over to a quick sample.
So I find it really amazing to watch how so many flex spaces are thriving in their own kind of way all across Australia. Today, I'm joined by Jessie Glew, who is a CEO over at WOTSO and is calling in from Sydney, Australia. Hey, Jessie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be on here today.
Great to have you here. So WOTSO has actually been in the newsletter quite a few times over the last couple of weeks. So firstly, congratulations to the whole WOTSO community on celebrating 10 years back in July. A huge milestone. We're all rooting for you all around the world. So congrats on that. Now, secondly, what's in a name? I've been wondering this for a while. What does WOTSO stand for?
I really wish I had a good story here, and I don't have a good story for you. It's really boring. WOTSO came out of our real estate portfolio. We put it into vacant space that we had. So we own a lot of real estate. We were putting it into vacant space that we had through the GFC. We started a really traditional serviced office business called Win Tressida Serviced Offices. So WTSO. However, we all sat in a room. We thought we need to come up with a great name here. We really need to inspire people with our name. It's got to be really catchy. We probably spent a whole day, the whole team, and we thought we're not going to pay a marketing crew to do this. We haven't got the money to do that at the moment. Let's come up with something really creative. And we thought, let's put an O in between the W and the T. And we came up with WOTSO. It's as simple as that. That's when we dove in and did our first space at Neutral Bay in Sydney. And from there, it grew to the 27 locations we've got today.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing trajectory. Is that reflective of kind of Australia's shift back to work, or is that something really special in the source and the water?
I think the reason that we're getting good traction is that our spaces are focused in the suburbs and the regions. And at the moment in Australia is that people are wanting to work closer to home. And we've been able to capitalize on that. Our real estate is located in the suburbs and regions that we own, but also the spaces that we've leased are in areas, in shopping centres in the suburbs. And I think that's really appealing to people. They don't have to commute into the CBD. They can work locally. And we're finding a lot of, it's not startups, it's really established businesses that have been around a very long time that are choosing to move away from the kitchen bench and take a space in one of our locations. We purchased a building in Brookvale in Sydney in New South Wales, and it's a 1,400 square metre building. It was completely vacant. We would expect that kind of a building in that market there to produce a yield somewhere between 4 and 6%. Mm-hmm. We are now up at about 9% yield on that asset, and we expect it to grow to about 12%. And has the capacity, as we know, with flex space to continue to grow because as your occupancy remains high, you can continue to grow your rates.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm assuming obviously you're also doing anything or adding more revenue that's not tied to square footage. Yeah. So you can increase the revenue even higher outside of just the traditional, per square footage that you would get on the traditional.
That's exactly it. You're adding service across there and community and everything that allows you to increase that revenue there.
That's fascinating. So for folks who don't know kind of what it means for you guys to be a listed flexible property security, like what are those 4 words to folks who are just like,
So essentially we go out, we acquire distressed real estate, whether it's physically distressed, financially distressed, and most of the time that real estate's vacant. We have a ready-made tenant in WOTSO to be able to come in to those buildings or into those assets, and immediately you have a revenue source straight away.
Yeah.
And then the objective is that we reconfigure the asset, fit it out for a WOTSO, and then grow the revenue from there. We add other traditional tenants in if the asset's large enough. So we might add a coffee shop, we might add a gym, we might add a childcare center, because the whole idea is that we have a vertically integrated asset. You don't have to leave. We don't want people to leave. We want to make it as convenient as possible for someone to come to work. And I think that's how our whole story started. It's where we want to keep going. But through that, we have also leased spaces off other landlords because we've found that there is a demand for flex in certain areas, but also that a network of flex spaces really helps. And we are seeing lots of members transition between different spaces.
That's really interesting. I'm just fascinated by the model, kind of propco, opco.
Yes, exactly it.
Kind of doing all the pieces. I love that. And obviously it seems to be working. Record revenues. So fantastic to hear that. What are you most excited about? What's so testing or expanding over the next 12 months?
I love this question because I was talking about this the other day with someone about our satellite locations. And these locations are, I would say that we originally were saying they were unserviced, but that's not correct. They're unstaffed. They don't have a staff member on site permanently, but they do have service. They have everything in the kitchen. They've got the beers in the fridge. They've got the coffee. All that sort of stuff is still there. There's still that service element, but there isn't a permanent staff member there. Why isn't there a permanent staff member there? Because the sites are too small to justify having someone there, but they can be serviced by a location that's nearby. Why is this really exciting? Because I think we're able to reach a broader community, provide space for a broader network of businesses. Because again, coming back to that whole piece of people want to work close to their home. So can we create this central site in the suburbs and regions and then have a bunch of scattered satellite locations, smaller locations that are serviced from that main hub, but still provide space to those businesses that need space a little bit closer to home? And I'm really excited to see how this plays out, because the whole idea is that at the end of the day, we are in there. I'm not going to lie and say we're not in this to make a profit for our shareholders. We are. That's what we're trying to do. But at the same time, it's such a nice feeling to be able to see the network of businesses that we have within our community growing, but also that we can provide space for them that actually works. They're not locked into a lease. They can work close to home. I think that's the bit that is exciting.
So there we go. That was the sample for the full interview. Definitely hop back in on Monday. It'll be in your podcast feed, whether you're subscribed on Spotify or a podcast. Mike, do you want to read us out? What's left for today?
Yep. What's left is we've got a pretty big interview coming next week. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow along. And I'm not talking about the interview with Jessie that Hector mentioned. So keep your eyes peeled for this next coming week on some big news coming. I think that's all that I've got. How about you?
I think that's everything. I would love to get feedback from folks. What do we do right? What do we do wrong? Do we talk about too many stories, too little stories? Do we not talk about enough sports metaphors? Let us know. Podcast at thisweekincoworking.com. And yeah, I'm so excited to be back in your audio feed. Thanks for letting us in. Let us know what you think.